Charlie, I'm glad that you called. Are you there with other cadets from the Merchant Marine Academy?
Yeah, we're all here.
Great. So I've got you on the phone, and I'm also recording this with video for a potential podcast thing.
Oh, awesome. Great.
How many cadets are there?
We got 9 of us here.
9. Fantastic. A great group. So I won't ask all of your names, but if each of you have individual questions, maybe I'll just ask you to say your first name if you ask a question. Charlie, I understand, and do you prefer Charlie or Charles?
Charlie's great.
Charlie's great, and please just call me Steve. I understand that sort of the basic thing that you are all interested in is how to prepare for a career as an officer of EOD technicians. Is that right?
Yeah, just overall in special operations communities.
Okay. So naturally, if you say special operations communities, that naturally covers a wide breadth, but I think much of what I'm going to say to you will apply. So I served in the U.S. Navy as an EOD technician, as an EOD officer, and at the time, in fact, the specialty was called Special Operations Officer. If you use the term Special Operations, sometimes folks use it generically, sort of lowercase s, lowercase l, o, to mean generically folks that are in Special Operations field. But in some cases, it can be used as a proper noun, like you'll see it as SOF, Special Operations Forces, all of them capitalized. If folks say Special Forces, capital S, capital F, that means something else also. I won't get into all those tonight, but in general, the rules and sort of the things that I'm going to recommend will apply for each and all of them. And of course, for the Navy SEALs, their more formal title is Naval Special Warfare. And if you serve as a Navy EOD technician, you might have the opportunity to serve with all of those special operations brethren, because we're one of those elements that have all of the specialized mobility skills. Ironically, mainline EOD is not part and parcel of the special operations community. So we're kind of have our one foot in the Navy proper, and 1 foot in with all the special operations guys. And there's some subtleties in that we can get into later. One thing I always like to talk to folks about, and it's a very common question, is how do I physically prepare for a curriculum of special operations, diving, parachuting, the rigors of that kind of work, and the training for that kind of a field. So my perspective naturally is one of a guy who my career path started by going to dive school first. And so one of the things that I say is certainly you have to be able to do all of the classic in-place PT stuff. Sit-ups, push-ups, flutter kicks, 8-count bodybuilders, pull-ups. I'm sure you folks are familiar with all of those. And it's important to do them properly. And you can go online and find different websites that will show you how to do all of them. As an example, for a push-up, you're going to want to do it with a straight back. With a sit-up, you're probably going to, most of them now have you put your hands on your shoulders and you make sure that you come to a full sitting upright position. So it's one of those train like you fight. Practice each one of those just as if you're going to do it when you're in the curriculum, and then it'll just become habit to just do it right and no other way. One of the things I recommend to folks is include in your regimen a run, swim, run thing. Like maybe run 2 miles, go and swim a mile, come back out and run another 2 miles. One of my rules about swimming, by the way, is I always say folks need to, when you swim, always have a safety observer or swim with a buddy. I've known folks in this field to have gone off and swam by themselves and have ended up hurt. In one case, a guy ended up killed. So it's important to always use the buddy system for that kind of stuff, but especially for swimming. Another thing that I say is it's important to be a really strong swimmer. I would describe myself as I was a lifeguard swimmer as a kid. So I wasn't like a swim team swimmer, but I was like a lifeguard swimmer. Strong swimmer, could swim a long distance, could tow other people if I needed to, could tread water for a long time. If you're able to swim and are very comfortable in the water, what that's going to do to you is create a situation where the swimming part of your PT is just easy and relaxing. those of us in the class that were the strongest swimmers, and so I did put myself in that category. Then the folks, I had a couple guys in my class who were actually like swim team swimmers. They were faster than I. As we would do swimming portions of our training evolution, we'd be out of the water and sort of relaxed and putting our shoes on, and everybody else is still grinding it out. So try to get yourself to a point where your swimming becomes very efficient. And that just comes from getting in the water and doing it and being repetitious. And if you think that you need help with it, I'm sure you can find somebody who's a local swimmer or a local swim coach, and they can give you pointers and help you on your stroke. The other thing that I always say about swimming is learn how to swim with fins. Swimming with fins is different than other types of open water swimming, and you're going to find that as part of your curriculum you're going to have to do swimming with fins. And if you practice with fins and get good at it and strong with it, then again it's one of those things that it sort of puts you ahead of the pack already when you get into whatever course that you're bound for. The last thing that I always say is the best way to prepare for the course is to practice the entry test of whatever it is. So for me, as a Navy diver, one of the things I did as I was getting physically ready, physically preparing myself for the curriculum, is that I would go, and every Friday I would do the diver entry test, which started off with a swim, had so many minutes of a rest. I don't remember it exactly. I think it was like 2 minutes of a rest, a certain distance. Then it was push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and then I think it was a mile-and-a-half run in a certain time period. And so the whole evolution was timed. You had to do each a certain portion. You had to get a certain score on. So again, one of the best ways to prepare yourself for that is just constantly give yourself the test on a regular basis. Some of you may have seen this. I've wrote a blog about this. When I was taking my entrance test, I actually did it with a rare breed that I don't know if there's any of these guys that exist anymore. A guy that was called a twin pin. He was an EOD and a Navy SEAL both. And so he was a Master Chief, and he gave me and several other candidates the test. And as he had us all lined up on the pool deck, he walked down the line and he asked each one of us what was our score going to be. What's your swim time going to be? What's your run time going to be? How many pull-ups are you going to do? A lot of guys kind of looked at him and were like, I don't know, Master Chief. Well, I told him I knew what my scores were going to be. I knew I was going to swim, the distance and however long it was. My run time, I knew what that was going to be. I knew my scores. And he said, and why do you know that, Lieutenant? And I said, well, because I prepared for the test, Master Chief. I've been giving the test to myself every Friday, So you want to be that guy, and you'll find that if you do that on a regular basis, you'll find yourself ready for the curriculum. I know a lot of folks right now are into lifting weights, and lifting weights is great. A lot of folks are into CrossFit. CrossFit's a good way to prepare. They do some CrossFit stuff in a lot of these specialized curriculums. The one thing that I will say is don't overdo it, though, in any one category. It is also true that you find guys that they're great runners, but they don't have the upper body strength. Or folks that are, strong because they've been lifting weights all the time, but they can't run very fast, or they're weak on the swim. So one of the things that I also say is try to make sure that you strike a balance of doing well in each one of those categories. And again, part of the best way to do that is to mix up your workouts and always give your some time to rest. If you go online, there's a lot of great resources on how to physically prepare for any of these curriculums. Prepare for BUDS, prepare for EOD. I think there's some groups out there that even will meet, and I think a lot of former Navy SEALs do this, where they've got a school that you go and you meet them someplace, and they'll teach you and PT with you and prepare you for the curriculum, prepare you for BUDS. And then also there's a guy by the name of Stu Smith, and if you look him up online, he's got a book, he's got videos. He's a former Navy SEAL that was at the Naval Academy the same time I was. He was class of 91, I believe. I was class of 92. And I've actually I don't know that I've ever met the guy, but he's well known and he's got some great information out there, and that will always be a great resource. So that's my starting thing of how to get yourself physically ready for EOD school or for any other specialized school. Do you have any specific questions about that stuff, or any other specific questions that I can answer?
Yes, sir. My name is Ben Hungerford. I'm a second classman. Switch gears. I have a question on more leadership, more Academy to prepare for your life as a junior officer starting out in EOD?
Right. So when I was at the Naval Academy, I tried to do as much leadership stuff as I could. So I tried and aspired to positions of leadership within my company. I was able to reach the point where I was my company commander, 14th company commander during my first class year. I tried to do other things that I thought would prepare me for life as an EOD technician. So as an example, I volunteered for and went to scuba school when I was a midshipman. And in fact, that's when I got introduced to the different aspects of the diving community. Before I went to Panama City, I knew that there were Navy divers. I had heard of Navy SEALs, but I didn't understand the whole thing that there were CB divers and salvage divers and EOD technicians. And that's really where I developed a strong understanding of it and kind of got attracted to the EOD community in and of itself. I did things like we had a combat pistol and combat rifle team at the time. And I say team, it was at the time it was really a club sport. It wasn't really competing like NCAA competing or anything like that. But I did that because I thought that would help me to prepare. There were various groups that would PT to prepare folks, as I described, for BUDS and for EOD school. We had a resident Navy SEAL. He would go out and PT every morning, and you folks were welcome to go out and do that. I did that with him. I'm trying to think of some other good leadership stuff. I just tried to do as much as I could. I was an honor representative because we had an honor system there, so I did that a couple of times. So I would say get into any clubs and activities that you think will help prepare you for a career in the field, and then try and aspire to do leadership stuff in each of those clubs, and then try to do leadership stuff within the hierarchy within the structure there at the Merchant Marine Academy. And if you do all of that and you do well, then you'll be able to express that when it comes to a screening time and say, hey, I have sought out positions of leadership to demonstrate that I can lead my peers and subordinates. Can you think of is there any particular group there at the Merchant Marine Academy that you think in particular is going to help you guys prepare for this? Do you have like a dive club, let's say, scuba club, something like that?
Well, we have a group, sir, that it's a bunch of guys that are interested in special operations, kind of just get together and do mission ethics things, and we have a lieutenant that's kind of our advisor that oversees our kids.
Fantastic. Is he an EOD tech or a Navy SEAL?
No, sir. He's actually a service warfare, but he's the designated liaison. We don't have a special operations. We don't have like an EOD or a SEAL mentor here like they do at the Naval Academy, sir.
Okay.
A designated service warfare officer.
And he acts as your LNO? So what I will try to do is I will try to get an 1140, which is the designator for Navy EOD. I'll try to get an 1140 to come up there and see you guys and talk to you about the community. Maybe there's somebody who comes on a regular basis. Have you guys known of that to happen in the last couple of years that you've been there? Is this a mix of guys like all different classes?
Yes, sir.
Have you had an 1140 come up and visit you guys in the last couple of years?
No, sir. Not my recollection.
Okay. I'm gonna write myself a note. I'm gonna see if I can get an 1140 to come up there and talk to you guys in particular. Where I am right now, I'm retired, so naturally I can give you guys good advice. But the best advice always is going to come, from a detailer or someone who's serving in the field now, naturally. So.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. What other questions are out there?
I did have a question. I really appreciate all the insight you've given us on the physical side, but I was kind of curious if I could have mentally going into your experience of operations and also during your initial training. And the mental side, during your training, how you prepare for that. It seems that you experienced during training that gave you insight on what it meant to have the result, not only make it through this office.
Yeah, so you were broken up there, but let me summarize what I think you said. I think you were asking me, how does one mentally prepare for the training and prepare for themselves mentally as a junior officer? Am I right? Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how does one mentally prepare themselves? Well, there's one thing. You can prepare yourself mentally by preparing yourself academically. And what I would do for that is I would try to get things like the U.S. Navy's dive manual, which you can go online and find. You can probably find it with Best Publishing. I'm going to look for a link to it too, and I'll send that to Charlie since he and I have comms. Best Pub Navy Dive Manual. And if you read the Navy Dive Manual, that'll get you ready for diving and understanding the academics aspect. Naturally, you're going to want to do as good as you can in school. Make sure that you're doing well in, chemistry and any of the other courses that you have. If there's electronics courses, I would take that. I suspect that most of you guys are going to have the academic rigor that's required to get through the curriculum. But there's another mental piece, and this is perhaps what you were talking about, is sort of the mental toughness, the mental endurance that it takes to get through the program. In general, I think it almost comes from your heart more than it comes from your head. Part of it is you just have to have this thing of, I'm just going to press on and I'm going to do this. I'm just going to go and go and go and go and go until, I drop, and I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to have the right attitude. And if you do that, if you have a positive attitude, and if you just decide that you're going to do everything that you can to make it through the program, I think you're going to find that you'll be successful. So some of it is just sort of your own mental decision of picturing yourself, getting yourself through the program, and gosh darn it, I'm going to do it. So I'll give you a little bit more specific. Here's an example of one of the things that I went through. One of the most difficult parts of the curriculum at dive school is pool week. And you guys may have gone online, and if not, I recommend that you do this, and I'll write this down too. I'll send you a couple pool week videos. The pool week is a week where they basically harass all the students in the pool. They take away your air, they tie your regulator up in knots, they bounce you around on the bottom. And so naturally it's mentally tough to get through that and then to try to put your gear all back together. What I'm describing, are you guys familiar with this? Have you seen these? I'm going to guess by the silence that you haven't, so I'll definitely have to send you the videos of those. So what happens is, the thing that I got in the water with was I just said to myself, I am not going to bolt to the surface. I'm going to fight my way through this problem. And they did have safety divers in the water, and I said, these guys aren't going to let me drown. I just said, I would rather pass out, black out, than bolt for the surface. And if you just mentally say that to yourself and say, these guys aren't going to let me die, I'm just going to press on and do this, you end up finding out that you can last for a long time without O2 underwater and work through the problem and mentally get through it. And each time you do one evolution like that, it gives you mental confidence to be able to move on and do the next one. So that's what sort of the best way that I can describe that. Another question.
Sorry, this is shipping business very class. Would you say to prepare like by lifting weights or anything? Would you say it's more the body weight that?
So preparing by lifting weights, I didn't hear the second half, but I'll respond in general. So I would not work out to be like a bodybuilder body type. I'd work out to be strong, but I'd work out to have a body like a triathlete. You know, you want to be strong, but you're still going to want to be relatively lean. You don't want to bulk up so big and so heavy that you're not a strong swimmer or that it's hard to run. You follow me? One of the things that I like to do, so CrossFit didn't exist back in the day when I was doing it, but one of the things that I like to do was low weight, or sort of medium weight probably, and higher reps more so than higher weight and low reps. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good. Someone else. So you guys are thinking of questions. I'll throw a question out there. Who knows who Draper Kaufman is or was? Yeah, can you tell me who Draper Kaufman was? I'd like to hear what your answer is.
So didn't he start the Navy SEALs? He was a Naval Academy graduate. He originally wasn't able to secure a commission because of his eyesight. He eventually ended up getting into the Navy and making admiral.
That's right. So I'll break it down a little bit more for you. Admiral Kaufman graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1933. He was deemed to be not commissionable because he had poor eyesight. He ended up joining a merchant fleet, and when war broke out in Europe, he decided that he wanted to get involved in the war, and he first became an ambulance driver in France, where he won the French Cross of War, Croix de Guerre. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce French right, but he later ended up going to the Royal Navy, and he became a mine and bomb disposal guy for the Royal Navy. And they ended up transferring him to the U.S. Navy when World War II broke out for us, and we entered obviously in December of 1941, and he founded the U.S. Navy's Mine and Bomb Disposal School. So that was the Navy's first EOD school in Washington, D.C. Later in the war, and I think it was in the spring of 1943, he was asked, so you know all the stuff about explosives and disarming bombs, can you blow stuff up? And he said, yeah. And they said, okay, so we'd like you to build a school for guys who are going to blow up obstacles all the beach landings in Europe and in the Pacific. And so he went down to Fort Pierce, Florida, and he formed what eventually became the UDT, Underwater Demolition Teams, that were the precursor for and what has now become the Navy SEAL teams. And in fact, there was a period of time where UDT and SEAL teams kind of overlapped a little bit. Kaufman ended up commanding UDT 5 during the World War II, and in fact, he cleared the entrance to Tokyo Bay prior to USS Missouri coming in because they thought that the Japanese might bring out suicide boats to attack Missouri for the signing of the surrender. There's a book that talks about his whole life that's called America's First Frogman, published by the Naval Institute Press. I recommend that you guys pick it up. It's a common question that people ask you if you want to come into the Navy EOD or Navy SEAL community is, who was Draper Kaufman? Because this guy basically is the grandfather of Navy EOD and Navy SEALs. And if you know who he is, it shows that you're a person who's interested in the community and is reaching out and is trying to get as much information as you can, just as you guys clearly are by reaching out to me and wanting to have this telecon. But so I recommend you guys getting a copy of that book and picking it up and reading it, and you'll get a lot more gouge about a true American hero.
I have another one.
Okay.
What kind of person would be good as a PTSD officer? I know we talked about the mentally physical part, but in terms of personality traits, especially as an officer who's obviously observed other junior officers coming in and had command over that, what do you look for? What did you look for personality-wise?
Yeah. Great question. Great question. So I interviewed and screened a lot of officers to come into the community. And most of the ones that I screen and give a letter of recommendation to end up making it into the community and end up making it, through the schoolhouse and everything else. So I feel like I am a good judge of character when it comes to who are the right folks for the Navy EOD community. In general, I can see and sense somebody who is confident but not cocky. Guys who come in and are cocky, I don't know what it is, but it emanates from them, and that's not the right kind of guy. They usually don't have the enthusiasm to make it all the way through the curriculum. They're attracted by the life, the machismo, whatever, and that's part of it. I'm not going to lie to you. When I was a young guy, that's part of what I was interested in. but they're interested more in the badge than they are in the life and actually doing the work to get into the community and the work that comes with staying in and being a professional. Conversely, I've met guys that I can tell are confident and have a confidence in themselves, but maybe there's a little bit of humility laced in it, and maybe there's just a subtlety to that adjective of being confident without being cocky that you can tell that they're serious about the nature of the work. So yeah, do they want to have fun and blow stuff up and parachute out of airplanes and dive? Sure, but they also realize that there's a serious part to the work and everything else. And whenever I would interview them, I'd ask them questions like, who is Draper Kaufman, or what do they think life is like as an EOD technician or a Navy SEAL? And when they would relay that to me, if they gave me an accurate picture, again, that kind of told me that they were serious about it. They genuinely were trying to do some research into the community and the like. And so that, for me, would go a long way. An officer in this community, in both of these communities, has got to be able to lead senior enlisted people who have clearly a lot more experience than the officer does, than the JO does. But yet you still have to be able to demonstrate that you have the authority to lead in that situation. And that's one of the more challenging leadership things that I think is available for young folks to do in the U.S. Navy. And how is that done? It's done by establishing the right relationship with your senior enlisted folks, by admitting just that. One of the things that I would do when especially when I was my first detachment, I sat down with a senior chief and said, Senior Chief, listen, I know that you have more experience than I do. I really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to you teaching me the ropes so that I can become a better EOD technician. But I also asserted to him, but I'm a very confident leader. I feel confident in my ability to make decisions. So let's you and I create a working relationship through this. And we sat down and worked out how it was going to be. And by establishing that right good working relationship with him from the start, that set me up for success. And one of the things that I always relate to other guys, and also I'll relate to you gents as a recommendation, is follow the habits of the other aspects of the fleet. And here's an example. In a small unit like an EOD platoon, it's easy for one of the younger guys who's 21, 22, 24 years old, close to your age as a JO, to come up directly to you and say, hey, Lieutenant, hey, Ensign, I want to do this, I want to do that. What do you say? Your response back to that guy should be, so use your chain of command. Yeah, to go talk to your chief, talk to your senior chief, let them come and bring it to me. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, perhaps in a small unit, especially in close confines, but you'll find that your senior chief appreciates it, and in time, the junior enlisted does too, because the junior enlisted sees that you have the right connection and relationship with the more senior EOD technician. So that creates a really much better working situation than I think some folks where by youth, Lieutenant JG and say a third-class petty officer end up creating a connection that avoids the senior chief, or chief petty officer or first-class petty officer. So you're going to want to avoid that. It's a community in which you have to be able to. There's times when you're going to be on a first-name basis with your folks, but you got to be able to turn that on and turn it off, and they have to be able to turn it on and turn it off. And I think you'll find that most of them are able to do that. And so there is a layer, there's a level that you never want to cross, and I think they understand that too. There's a line that you don't cross in that relationship as a JO with the EOD techs. There was another aspect of this that I wanted to say. So one of the things that I recommend, though, and I would say this to all of the folks who are the techs on my detachment, is I accept criticism and critique, and I accepted it openly, and I would hear what they would have to say, and sort of my deal with them was, you're going to find that if you have a critique or criticism of me, or if a plan that I have, you're probably going to find 85% of the time I'm going to sit back and go, wow, Petty Officer Smith, you're right. That's a better way to do this. Let's try your way. And if you do that, you're going to buy their loyalty. But conversely, the 15% of the time when you go, all right, Smith, I've heard what you have to say, but I still want to do it this way, they in turn will say, okay, roger that, So you've got to create that kind of a working relationship with them so that comes out. And don't take yourself too seriously. These are communities where junior folks are always pulling jokes and doing roughhousing with the JOs. There's a certain amount of that you got to recognize as okay and healthy and good to go. So,
Thanks, sir.
yeah, right on.
Sir, class. All of us here at Merchant Marine Academy, just as Naval Academy, are obviously going officer. I was wondering if you could fill us in on some perks or maybe even some negatives of being an officer, or even if you could, maybe some perks of being enlisted or negatives of enlisting.
Yeah, so I'll start in general about all EOD technicians, whether enlisted or officer. When you go on board a ship, you have your own world on board, and that's your space, and nobody else really comes in there or disturbs you. Most ships will even have separate berthing areas for the EOD technicians, and so that's kind of a nice perk that people kind of leave you alone, you know. You normally don't stand watch on board the ship. They might have you stand duty on a duty section day if the ship's in port. But one of the things that I liked, so I started my career in surface warfare and now transferred into EOD. Big difference being on board the ship as a young lieutenant when I wasn't standing watch, when I was basically a ship rider. You know, some of the perks are, there's some nice things about, you get Gucci gear, you know. So first thing when I reported to my first attachment, I got a custom-made wetsuit. So I actually went to this guy who was like a tailor, but measured all my measurements for a wetsuit, and so it custom to fit my body, and you know, paid for by the U.S. Navy. Got all the gear that you can imagine. You know, the flight vest, the camis, the helmets, the, you know, all the load-bearing vests and everything. So that's the toys are always fun. You know. I think among the perks are that you're treated differently in general from the rest of the fleet. Your sailors are going to be more squared away. The officers tend to be more squared away, and so as a result, you're given a little bit more respect. And I'm trying to think of specific perks, though, other than that. And right now, I'm not really thinking of any. You know, you get some extra pay because you get the pay for the hazard duty pay and the dive and the demo pay, so that's really nice. I'm sure the 1140 community has a bonus that comes probably mid-career now, too. The assignments, I think, are a lot better. And one of the things that I like is, so I consider this to be a perk, and one of the reasons I'm attracted to the community is I really liked a lot of things about the mission and the fact that I would be operating as a junior officer with my team. They call them platoons now. In my day, we called them detachments. And would be able to go out and operate basically on our own and set our own schedule and figure our own thing. You know, we had training requirements that we had to meet, but we would set our own schedule. So I would sit down with my senior chief and say, "What do you think we ought to do this week?" And he'd say, "We need to let's get a dive in, let's go shoot, let's go do some demolition." And we would plan out our training schedule and go out and do that. And so that was a lot of fun. And you can have fun with it too. So sometimes we would go and do diving evolutions, but we'd be spearfishing. So we'd say, we're going to go do a Mark 16 dive. It's going to be a deep dive. We're going to go on an oil rig out here in the Gulf of Mexico, and we're going to take some spear guns and spear some fish, and then we're going to come back and have a little barbecue. You know, so it was training, but we had some fun along the way. And I don't think you get that in other aspects, other career fields in the U.S. Navy. It's definitely a work hard, play hard mentality. I like the fact that I wasn't micromanaged in my day. You know, again, as a leader, you had to meet certain milestones.